Okay, guys, this is our first homework for the second semester. Um, it will have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on it. And it is a spiral of everything that we have done so far. There are a few things on here that we have not gotten to yet that that you may struggle with. So I'm going to go over it with you um, step by step. And we'll also go over it in class if you have any questions. So making sure that you're starting on Monday, you can use your calculator, um, and but I also want to see you work out your problems as well, okay? Or at least show me how you set up your problems. So starting with number one here, it says there are 18 cupcakes. How many 3/4 servings can you make? Okay, if there are 18 cupcakes, okay, that's what we have. We're taking that 18 cupcakes and we're dividing it into 3/4 servings. And so when you set up problems like that, you always start with what you have and then what size you're splitting it into. So you would just come and punch in your calculator 18 divided by 3/4, and you get 24. So that means I would get 24 different servings. If I took my 18 cupcakes and split them into 3/4 sections, and gave each person 3/4, then I would be able to feed 24 people. Is basically what that's saying. All right. Number two, I'm not necessarily going to do for you. You should be able to do yourself. You can just punch it in your calculator. Number three, it says write the ratio in simplest form. So we've got our ratio 8:2. We've talked about how ratios can be written like this with the dot form. We talked about how it can be written in the form of a word, but we also talked that it can be written in the form of a fraction. So we can simplify this ratio because it is also a fraction. We can simplify our fractions. Um, One of those methods we can use to simplify fractions or ratios is just division, or you could also use the slide method. I can come over here and put 8 and 2 in the slide, making sure I keep it in the same order that it was originally in. And I can decide what do 8 and 2 have in common. Well, 2 is in my sliding 6. It's one of my first prime numbers, and it's even. And so I know that 2 will work for 2 and 2 will work for 8. So I'll try 2. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4, and 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. And remember, when working with the slide method, once you hit a 1, you're done. You can't go any further. So this is as low as I can go. And keeping this in the same order, this bottom row right here is actually my new ratio. So my ratio is 4:1. So the simplified version of 8:2 is actually 4:1. All right, looking at number 4, it says Aria drank 500 milliliters of water after her run. Her best friend, Andrea, drank 0.75 liters of water. Who drank more? So here we're comparing milliliters to liters. And we want to know how many milliliters are in a liter. So there are 100 milliliters in 1 liter. So I want to compare that for a second. There are 100 milliliters in 1 liter. So if I have 500 milliliters, how many liters would that be? It would actually equal 5 liters. So which is greater, 5 liters or 75 hundredths of a liter? Which is greater? Who would you say drank more? Well, 5 liters is obviously greater than this right here. So I would say Aria drank more. Okay, so the next one, it says, what is the value of 7 5/10 times the amount of 3x plus 4 when x equals 7? This is one of those substitution questions like we did in class today. we're going to replace this x with its value of 7. But before we can do that, we have to remember, what does it mean when a number is next to a variable? When a number is next to a variable, the coefficient in the variable, the operation that's happening between the two is multiplication. So we need to split it up and rewrite it using multiplication. Okay? And now we can go in here and we can replace that x with a 7. So I can rewrite it times 3 times 7 plus 4. And I can follow order of operations to solve this. But if you wrote this out like this for me, then I'm going to let you just put it in your calculator exactly the way you found it or the way you wrote it. And when we multiply that out, we get 187 and 5/10. All right, the sixth one is the one I told you to put a star by because we haven't done these in class, but you probably really could, if you stop to think about it, figure this out. The one thing is, it says list 3 values that would make this inequality true. This symbol right here, you have to know what that symbol means, and that symbol means greater than. So we need to add something to 28 that's going to make it greater than 42. So what could we add to add to this to be greater than 42? Well, if I think about it, you could do just about a whole lot of stuff. What's the smallest number, though, that we can make? And so to figure that out, I'm going to kind of work in reverse. If my goal is 42 and I'm trying to add and I'm working in reverse, I'm going to subtract real quick. So 42 minus 28 gives me 14. So what that means is if I do 28 plus 14, it's going to give me exactly 42. I don't want exactly 42. I want more than 42. So what's the smallest number it can start with? Well, if I start with 14, that's going to give exactly it. If I start with 13, if I do 28 plus 13, that's going to give me 41. So I've got to go higher. So if I do 28 plus 15, that's going to give me 43, which is greater. So really, anything that is 15 or higher, I can use. So I can use 15, 16, 17, 18. Anything greater than 15 I could use. I could use 100. It doesn't matter. I just know that it can be 15 or higher. It has to be bigger than 14. 14 gives me exactly 42, and I need it to be bigger than 42, so anything bigger than 14 would work here. All right, next question. Carla, the baker, worked for 5 hours to make cookies. She ended up with 380 cookies altogether. Write an equation to express how many cookies Carla made each hour. So if she worked 5 hours, okay, if she worked 5 and she ended up with 380 cookies in the end, how many cookies did she make per hour? What operation is that going to be? That's going to be multiplication. So for 5 hours, she made C amount of cookies and ended up with 380 cookies. So what would the C represent? How many cookies did she make each hour if she only worked 5 hours? Well, you can think about that. What is 380 divided by 5? Well, that's 76. So Carla worked 5 hours, and each hour she made 76 cookies. And so if she did that each hour, she made a total of 380 cookies. So this right here is really our answer because that's the equation that we were looking for. This is the equation answered. Okay. All right. It says every hour of driving uses 3 gallons of gas. Use a table to find how many gallons of gas would be used if driving for 15 hours. So here we are comparing hours to gallons of gas. And I don't know if you remember or not, but when we have when we're comparing two things, that's called a ratio. If I'm comparing 1 hour to 3 gallons, I've got that ratio. I want to know if I go 15 hours, if this is my hours, how many gallons is that going to be? And if you so remember what we did here was when we were trying to solve these mysteries, we would put them in a ratio box. When we were solving ratios, we put them in ratio boxes and we label what we were comparing, hours to gallons, hours to gallons. In 1 hour, I use 3 gallons. Well, if I go 15 hours, how many gallons do I use? And to solve for this empty box, I would have to cross multiply 15 times 3, which would give me 45. And then I would divide it by the other box, the opposite box, which is 1, which is going to give me just 45. So that means in 15 hours, I'm going to use 45 gallons. And then the very last question I also told you to put a star by, just because we haven't gotten to area. But it's just like the area of a rectangle. It says find the area of a parallelogram. Well, if I cut off this triangle right here and I moved it over to right here, and I just looked right here, it would make a rectangle. And to find the area of a rectangle, you do base times height or length times width. So to find the area of this parallelogram, I'm just going to multiply the base times the height. So I'm going to multiply the 12 times the 8. So my area should be 12 times 8 should be 96 centimeters squared. So you should have all of this filled out. As much work as I have, you should have the same amount, if not more, on your homework. And like I said, if there's still questions that you have over this, then we'll go over it in class. You just have to let me know which ones they are. But until next time, I will see you on Tuesday.